And in today's video, we sit down with our local expert, Ryan from Carson Law, and he's going to break down everything kind of pre-construction condo contracts.
And like one client's project was 80 grand.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
not inconsequential.
Yeah. Whereas that's not been the norm. I mean, if all of a sudden that's the course all the builders are going in the industry, if that's their new train of thought, I mean, that is a huge red flag for somebody buying a builder house. Like now you need to what are the development charges? You guys are going to have to disclose that, because how can you expect me to just be ready for an extra 80K?
What is up, YouTube? Matt McKeever here, and in today's video, we sit down with our local expert, Ryan from Carson Law, and he's going to break down everything kind of pre-construction condo contracts. This is an area that I really don't know a lot about, so I was really excited to have Ryan on the channel and just break down for us exactly what we can expect when looking at doing a pre-construction condo. And this video, we took a very conversational oriented approach, so let me know if you enjoyed the general, I guess, like pacing of this video. It's a little bit different than the videos we normally shoot with Ryan, so if you guys like it, we're very happy to continue shooting videos like this. If you don't, we can always return to the style we used to do with the old videos, but let us know in the comment section either way. And otherwise, you know, understand Ryan touches upon some really important aspects in this contract. I think it's really important you guys get an expert on your power team that understands the intricate details the way Ryan does. If you're interested in using Ryan, as always, there's a link in the video description down below. You can get in contact with him or his team. But again, doesn't matter whether you use Ryan or not, but make sure you've got an expert, because he points out that there's a lot of changes occurring with some of the contracts going on in pre-construction, and you guys need to make sure you understand, or there could be serious cost consequences. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Smash the like button, subscribe if you do, and let's jump into it.
I know we used to do a lot of pre-construction reviews. I wouldn't say we do as much. I mean, that's probably going to heat up for us because we got a couple developers that we're going to be on site kind of with, so we'll probably see quite a bit more of that. But we actually had two builder deals come in, and the wording, if you're familiar, has always been with the development charges. It was always, the wording always said, you'll be charged possibly for an increase of a development charge or levy, not necessarily you'll be charged on the closing additionally for just development charges and levies.
Oh, okay.
And so what we're seeing right now, or what we've seen in these last two deals, is we've actually seen the wording without that increase too. And it just says you have to pay development charges extra. And like one client's project was 80 grand.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, that's not inconsequential.
Yeah, whereas that's not been the norm. And I mean, I think there's an issue there that is potentially litigious for the builder, because in the agreement they say charge the development charges. In the addendum to the agreement, they use the wording which has been more traditionally used, which is increases to development charges, right? Because normally the standard kind of mass builder deals basically have it so the purchase price already includes whatever they're being charged for development charges. Like they've already factored it into the price. The only thing they don't want to be out of pocket for is they don't want to be out of pocket on any increases. And usually the increases from the time the agreement of purchase and sale is signed and the building permit being issued, right? So that's the normal wording that we've seen, but this is twice now, like two separate builders. They're smaller builders, so that might be why. Like they seem to be more like a custom builder type of thing, and not like Mattamy or like Green Park or these big builders. But still, like, I mean, if all of a sudden that's the course all the builders are going in the industry, if that's their new train of thought, I mean, that is a huge red flag for somebody buying a builder house. Like now you need to what are the development charges? You guys are going to have to disclose that, because how can you expect me to just be ready for an extra 80K?
And like, I know this isn't your field, but do you know, is that like mortgageable, or is that like a cash charge that the
It only would be something that they could mortgage if the builder would include it in in the actual consideration, right? So that's why I'm surprised that we've seen these two deals that way, because that's a huge reason why they make the purchase price inclusive of all these things historically.
Mhm.
Because like I mean, each lot's development charge is probably, like on a subdivision property, at least like 40 to 50K, I would think, because it's like your sewers, your septic, your lines, like everything to make it developed, right? Like everything
Mhm.
to develop the subdivision and the lot, so, and make it serviceable. And it's just sometimes that the city and the region decide, well, our costs have gone up, or we want to make more money, so we're charging you extra now, right?
Mhm.
as
Interesting.
opposed to, as opposed to what they estimated before, when obviously they went through the initial phases of development, when the builder then figured, okay, these are going to be our costs for development, so per lot, we have our building costs, for our materials and our labor and our whatever, we have our city and region costs, which are development charges, so we got to put that into the price, and then we have our, like, what do we want to make,
Mhm.
and put that into the price. And so A, B, and C have now made final price D, right?
Mhm.
Um, anyways, it's
And
that was something that just came up out of nowhere, and it was really that's come up twice now, just in a matter of 2 weeks, and it's just like, is this a change in the industry? Like, what's happening here all of a sudden with these builders?
yeah, that's really interesting. Like, normally, is there ever a cap on that? Like, so like, or is it literally like, can they add a surcharge to it, or is it only the cost that they can flow through? I'm just kind of curious now.
Yeah, well, so traditionally, like before this example that I just mentioned to you that we've seen in the last 30 days, for the last, I don't know, almost dozen years or more that I've been practicing, the last 14, 15 years, it's always, the wording's always been, you'll pay 500,000 for the purchase price, but then they usually have an adjustments provision within the builder contract. It's usually what they call it, adjustments or builder closing costs. And there'll be like a list of like A through J or A through F or something. And a couple of those sub provisions will be um, wording that says you will pay for the increases of the development charges. You will pay for the increases of the levies. Um, those are the two main ones. So normally when we would get those is one of the things we know that the builders might entertain capping or putting an amendment on so that you can't exceed a number, were those items. Like, those were a couple of the items that you could request like a budgetary cap on, so you can like
Gotcha.
plan your
Yeah.
finances, right? um and so that would have to be done during like the conditional period, whether it's a condo, like the 10-day cooling off period, or it's typically around 5 days if it's like just a freehold build. But that's as per the agreement, whatever you negotiate with the builder. Um, but as long as you had that amendment in place to cap those adjustments or those builder closing costs within that period of time, um, then obviously, if it turned out the cost of the builder was actually 12 grand, but they agreed to cap it at 6, well, they can't charge you more than the 6.
Mhm.
They're going to have to eat 6, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So, like, what we had normally been seeing was the wording that said increases, like I said.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that we've been seeing is probably a cap range of somewhere between, like, I mean, the high rises in the big cities are always a bit higher, like a higher cap, just because the costs are typically potentially greater there.
Mhm.
Um, but probably somewhere on the lower end of 5,000 to the higher end of like maybe 15, 20.
Gotcha.
And normally, like, that higher number is something that you see in projects that are more significantly delayed. So the longer the, like, if we signed a deal in 2016, like we have one that's closing just now, and it was a condo that they inked in 2016. I'm not going to be surprised if we see some, development charge increases on that, because you're talking about 5 years, right? That have elapsed, more or less, right? So that's probably going to see some increase. But if something closes as scheduled, which right now is probably not going to be many things for a while, because COVID by itself was an unavoidable delay that builders are all stuck with, right? So yeah, I think at the end of the day, the normal wording we've been used to seeing are increases to charges, levies, development fees, etc. But something for people to be cautious of or leery about is them not having that wording, and it just flat out says, oh, you have to pay the whole charge or levy on top of the purchase price. Because in our conversation earlier, we alluded to the fact that could be substantial. Like we had one deal where it was, it was over $50,000. That's a huge number. So if they're not going to cap it, then the lawyer who's representing you needs to at least at that point request what's the number look like, so I can budget at least.
And so just kind of building upon this then, Ryan, like I've never bought pre-construction before. So what other language or what other like tips, or maybe like, stuff that's not always boilerplate that's identical that we should be looking at when potentially looking at buying pre-construction?
Yeah, I mean, the hot topic items that we would always flag for people in our standard review when buying pre-construction, one of them was adjustments, so builder closing costs and adjustments. So making sure those are well known, and in hopefully all of them, they're capped or deleted. Or if we can't cap or delete them because the builder just won't agree to it, then we need to at least know what is the estimation. And I guess to our conversation here, can we make it so that those will be consideration in the final purchase price, so that we can get a mortgage for that, right? So I would say that's one thing we always flag for people is the builder closing costs and adjustments. We always flag for people HST, because unlike a resale property that's residential, commercial is different. But if a property is resale, like if I buy your house from you, you and I don't pay HST on $500,000. But if you buy from a builder, theoretically, it doesn't have the same exemptions under the HST. So you actually have to pay HST. But what the builder does is they include all the HST again within the purchase price. Traditionally, this is what they do. They include all the HST in the purchase price. And as long as you qualify for the what's called HST rebate, and as long as you assign it from yourself to the builder, then the builder will pay and remit all the HST to CRA. And then they, through the assignment of the HST rebate, will collect the rebate from CRA. The rebate's about $24,000. So, if to a buyer, the HST rebate is kind of a wash on the final closing. It shows credit to the builder, $24,000, credit to the buyer, $24,000. So the buyer's not really paying any more, but they're not paying any less either. But they don't have to worry about filing and remitting HST if they qualify for the rebate. The only way to qualify for the rebate is you're buying it for personal use. So then the other thing to consider is if you're a real estate investor and you want to be buying these properties for buy and holds or buy and flips or whatever you want to try to do, assignments, just be leery of the fact that, or be mindful that you need to make sure that if you're closing and you're not going to move in there, and you're either going to tenant it or you're going to flip it, that HST rebate won't apply to you. So you're going to have to pay that extra $24,000 at the time of closing. Now, if you rent it to a tenant, there is an HST rental rebate that you can apply for, and it's the same. You just have to pay the HST rebate up front to the builder because they can't get that credit anymore. And then basically you apply for the HST rental rebate thereafter, and you would get that back to you in full from CRA.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Probably takes 3 to 6 months.
Gotcha. And just to build upon this for people listening at home, like this is really important from an investor's perspective because, you know, that 13% could make or break your margin, right? That could be your entire profit if you were hoping to assign this deal or you were hoping to close and relist immediately and things of that nature. So again, really important that you sit down and understand exactly what those input costs are going to be because, you know, if all of a sudden we're paying $50,000 in development charges, we're paying $24,000 in HST, all of a sudden, like, you might have thought that you've got $100,000 margin there. We're like, oh, I buy this for $500,000, sell it for $600,000, I get rich. And then once you dig a little bit deeper into the numbers, you know, it's not going to work out that way necessarily.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, on that point, I would say, you know, obviously you want to have a lawyer review it, especially if it's your first couple or if it's a new builder for you. I mean, bottom line, I would say just get it reviewed anyways. But you probably want to make sure before you move forward that you've had a good discussion with a familiar accountant so that you make sure, you know, you're considering in your your budget and your equity that you think you're going to have. You want to make sure that you know any and all capital gains that you might have to pay, you know, depending on which route you go and what those might look like, because that will impact obviously again, how much you think you're actually going to have at the end of the day.
What you going to keep? Yeah.
Is it 100,000 or is it now only 50,000? Right. So, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so it would be HST, builder development charges and adjustments. We review kind of to make sure they understand the delayed closing parameters because there's quite a lengthy delayed closing process if the builders give the proper notice. In that discussion, we'll also kind of make sure they have a highlight of delayed closing costs that you can get reimbursed if they fail to comply with the notices. What are the other ones we would talk about? Those are really the main ones, you know, closing costs and builder adjustments, HST, delayed closing, and then just the use, you know. So we talk about how are you planning to use it, which we've already went over that, why that would be important. Personal use versus rental, just making sure people understand the impacts of that from a tax and capital gains perspective, HST rebate perspective, that kind of thing.
Awesome. Really appreciate you breaking it down for us like that. And I'm just curious, again, because I've never really done pre-construction. It's not necessarily an area that's my specialty. How often do things just go perfectly clean? Or how often do you find that like there's things that come up? Does this question even make sense? Like, do you know what I mean? Kind of like, I guess I know usually like on a resale home, to me, I would say it's usually pretty clean. Like it's going to go the way the contract said, and that's kind of that. Like how often do you find that, you know, you are going to have to reach out to the builder or developer and say like, hey, you guys lapsed this time period, or we're owed this compensation, stuff like that?
Yeah. I would say it's, you know, probably the higher percentage of it being pretty clean
Gotcha.
with not that many issues. Excuse me. Bless me. So I think the most common thing might be delayed closing notice that's needed. So the question just is, have they given the requisite notice period of delay? If they didn't, then obviously it's just making sure the client's aware of that, and then there's a bit of a process to do after the closing to collect on your on delayed closing compensation. I wouldn't, because there's not going to be a title issue because the builder wouldn't be selling it if there wasn't clean title. 99.9% of the time. So there's not a lot of title issues. I think the biggest issues that come up is just that clients being kind of unaware of of kind of the numbers that we kind of talked about, and then making sure they have a budget, right? Because a lot of these deals go over quite a lengthy period of time. You know, they're not they're not 30,
Yeah.
60 days. They could be like a year to multiple years. And so you kind of forget, you know, you forget a lot of things in that period of time. Like, oh crap, I didn't even remember that's how much I needed to pay for this thing, right? Or you know, you forget that I needed to make sure I budgeted an extra 24,000 because I'm going to be renting this for the, you know, so I need to budget that extra 24 until I get the rebate back, or whatever the case is, right? So so I would say it's more budgetary than anything. And I think the place where people kind of fall and trip up the easiest is they don't necessarily get the agreements reviewed when they're conditional. And then like at that point, after it's firm, we can't do anything with it, right? We can tell you what it says, but you might not be happy about what you learn, and or it might be actually quite a problem, because you might say, well, I can't afford like an extra 20 grand at closing, or whatever the case is, right? So so I think that's probably the biggest thing. Is it's not that they don't go clean, it's just that if you don't get it reviewed while it's conditional and really kind of understand the differences between resale and pre-construction, some of the things could be quite surprising and potentially expensive for you. So I think get it reviewed while it's conditional, make sure you do understand everything, make sure budgetarily everything makes sense, and it's going to work for, like, if you're using it for investment, that it's still going to work as a good investment strategy. And I think that's the main thing. I don't think there's a lot of hiccups or issues we run into because the builder hasn't done something per se, other than they get delayed and then all of a sudden there's delayed closing compensation.
Awesome. Really appreciate you breaking down the process for us, Ryan, here, just kind of everything pre-construction. As always, guys, you know, all of Ryan's contact information, Carson Law's contact information is in the video description down below. Really do encourage you guys to reach out. Ryan, you guys are happy to work with investors across Ontario, right?
Absolutely, of course.
Awesome. So yeah, so you know, they're based out of the west side of the GTA, but working with investors across Ontario. So again, really encourage you guys to reach out. And as we kind of started off this video just chatting about like the importance of the relationship, I think the reason we decided to kind of do this video this way or continue to shoot it is you guys should feel comfortable having these sort of conversations with your lawyer. You shouldn't be scared of embarrassing yourself. You shouldn't be scared of looking stupid. The time to find out is when you're still conditional, not once you've gone firm and you're like, okay, now I'll take it to the lawyer.
Exactly, 100%.
Awesome. Thanks again, Ryan.
You got it.
Thanks again to Ryan for taking the time to shoot this video. We covered a lot in this. I hope you guys got a ton of value from it. If you did, smash that like button, hit subscribe if you're new to my channel. And as always, Ryan's contact information is in the video description down below. Really encourage you to reach out to Ryan if you've got any questions or if you're looking for a lawyer on your next real estate transaction. But regardless of whether you use Ryan or not, make sure that you're using an expert that knows what they're doing, because as we discussed in this video, there's some nuances to these contracts that you guys need to make sure you understand, or at least your attorney understands on your behalf, to make sure you're protected and you're not going to end up with those like scary bills where you could end up with tens or, you know, $40,000, $50,000 in unexpected expenses. That's massive. All right. Thanks, guys.